Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Penny and this is Little by Little. Before we get started, I just want to take a quick moment and wish you some season's greetings. If you celebrate Christmas, a very Merry Christmas to you. If you don't celebrate Christmas and there's some other holiday, whatever that holiday is, I wish you well. Now this will be the last video that I'll be putting out for 2023. I have lots of things planned for 2024, so I hope you'll continue to join me here on my channel. In today's video, we're going to be making a very simple little coffee table with a sliding door. Now, the nice thing about this particular type of furniture is that you can get creative and you can dress it up or leave it as basic as you wish, depending on whatever your taste is. As always, your cutting instructions are in the description box below, so let's get started. We're going to start with our two pieces marked B, which are the two side pieces, and piece F, which is the back piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure about 17 millimeters on each of these pieces. So if you make a mark at one end and then another one at the top, and then you can draw your line across. The reason that I'm making these lines is we're going to be installing a shelf, and these lines will help keep that shelf nice and straight. Once you've got your lines drawn, if you lay them all end to end, that line should be straight across on all three pieces. So I put my back piece to the side for now, and I'm bringing in the 4 posts. So each of these two sides will have a post on either side of it. So turn your piece around so that that line you've drawn is on the bottom. And then we're going to take our 2 posts and we're going to glue them to the sides of this piece. So we'll add some glue to 2 sides of this back piece. And then we're going to lay it down on our workstation, and I want to make sure that the top of the posts are flush with the top of piece B. Now, if you are a fan of Julie Warren from Little Bits and Pieces, this probably looks a little bit familiar to you. I would say that the majority of her wooden furniture pieces have this exposed post, and I think it's quite lovely. It adds a lot of character to a piece of furniture. So here are our 2 side pieces, and now I'll turn them around so that the tops of them are nice and flush. And so these 2 sides will go to the inside. That spot where you've drawn that line will be on the inside of the furniture. So now we're going to bring in piece C, one of piece D, and piece E. And we're going to create the bottom of the coffee table. So I'm going to start by taking this piece D, which is this thinner piece, and I'm going to glue it directly on top of piece C. So make sure that the back edge and the 2 side edges are flush. Make sure you have some clamps or something nice and heavy to weight this down. We don't want this piece to warp. When you apply your glue, make sure you get all the way to the ends so that nothing is kind of peeking up on you when you're done. Then we'll go ahead and add as many clamps as you can fit on there, and that way it'll stay nice and tight as it dries. Once that piece is dry, then we're going to take that second piece marked E and we're going to add it to the opposite edge. So again, we're going to make sure that it is nice and flush with the front. And what that does is it creates a groove that I'll be able to then put a sliding door into. Again, make sure you're clamping these pieces down nice and tight until they're completely dry. It's also a good idea to go into that little groove that you've made with a toothpick and just clean out any excess glue that might have squeezed out from underneath that piece of wood. You don't want dry glue in that track impeding your ability to open and close the sliding door. I'm also going to take a second before that glue is completely dry and make sure that the piece of wood that I'm going to use for the sliding door slides through there nice and easily. Next, we're going to bring in our back piece, which is piece F, and that is going to sit against the back of the bottom. Let me just pick this up and show you what I mean. So it's going to sit like this. So we're going to add some glue to the back side of this bottom piece. Okay, and we'll lay that down on our surface and just push that back piece up against it. Now, I like to use my 1, 2, 3 blocks, or my setup blocks, to make sure that those two pieces stay at a 90-degree angle. We can go ahead now and add the two sides onto that base and back. So again, remembering that the side that has the lines drawn go to the inside. And this gap at the bottom of the side pieces, those are your legs, so they're going to go at the bottom of that piece. So put some glue on that L-shaped edge. And then we'll go ahead and add one of the sides on. Now you just have to eyeball here because it's not going to go all the way out to the edge, but I think there's about 1 millimeter on each side of the bottom of that piece in comparison to the side posts. And then of course we'll go ahead and add the other side on as well. The next piece that we're going to add is this little brace piece marked piece G. So what I've done is I've just gone in and I've measured about halfway across the bottom and the back, which is about 43 millimeters, just so that I can make sure that the brace is relatively close to the middle. So I'm going to add glue to the brace on one long side and one short side. Then you can go ahead and glue that little brace in. So what that's going to do is just add some support to the shelf that's going to go inside of the coffee table. So make sure that that brace doesn't come out past where you've made that groove for the door. So we're going to install that shelf next. So I'm just doing a little bit of a dry fit here just to make sure that it's cut to the right size. We're going to use those lines that we drew at the very beginning. That will help keep that shelf nice and straight. So you can go ahead and add glue to 3 sides, so the 2 short sides and the long side. And then you can also add a little bit of glue to the top of that brace. We'll work on the top next, which is piece I. And so all I'm going to do with this piece is I'm just going to lay it on top of the coffee table and I'm going to line it up where I want it to be. Now you can see here that it's a little bit bigger than the base of the coffee table. That's on purpose. And I'm just eyeballing to make sure that all of the sides are even. Then holding that nice and snug, I'm just going to take a pencil and I'm going to go in and trace along the bottom of that piece so that I have the exact measurement drawn on the bottom of this top piece. I need to create the same type of groove on the top as I did on the bottom for the door. So I'm bringing in my third piece marked D, and it's not going to sit flush with the back like it did on the bottom. I'm going to use that little box that I've drawn as a guide for where I need to glue that thinner piece in. And again, make sure that you're clamping it or you're weighting it down so that it doesn't warp on you while it dries. Then you're going to go in and you're going to glue that second piece marked E so that you have the same track on the top as you do on the bottom. Don't glue the top on just yet though. I'm going to add one more piece onto the top before I install it. You don't have to do this, it's completely optional. It is just slightly bigger than the first piece, and I just think it just adds just a little bit more style to the piece. Okay, moving on. So we're going to do the sliding door next. So I have this little handle that I'm going to be using, and I went ahead and I attached it onto the door and then ended up taking it off because I didn't like where I had placed it. So for the next little bit, try and ignore where the handle is. I'll show you in a minute or so where it ended up after I was done. In an effort to give this coffee table just a little bit more style, I'm going to be adding some finishing pieces to the front of the drawer as well as the rest of the coffee table. So I'm using these wood stirrers. These are super thin. They're only about probably less than a millimeter in width. I would say probably 0.8 of a millimeter. And they're about 4 millimeters wide. So they're really super easy to cut. You can just use a pair of scissors if you like, or if you have one of those chomper tools, you can use that. But basically, I'm just going to go around and outline the edges of the door first. So starting on the shorter sides, I'm just using the door itself to measure. So I'll lay it down and just use my pencil to mark off where I need to cut that strip. And then I'll add it to that side. Make sure you leave a little bit of room at the top and bottom so that that piece of door still fits in those grooves. So I've left about a millimeter on the top and bottom of the door. I'm going to add those same wood strips to the outside of the coffee table as well. So to both of the ends as well as the back. Here's where I ended up moving the handle to. After I placed that trim around the outside edge, I decided to add these little cross braces as well, because I think it just adds a little bit more of a finish to the piece. I'm going to do the same thing to the drawer front. I like that so much better. So now that all of the pieces are assembled, it's time to put it all together. So I'm going to start by putting my door inside of that bottom groove. Then you'll take your top piece and of course make sure that the groove on the top piece is facing forward and not towards the back. You may want to test fit that top just to make sure that it goes into the right place. But once you're confident, then you can just go ahead and add glue to the two sides and the back of the piece. So we'll prop that door into the groove and then we'll take our top piece and it should just snap right down on top. Make sure it's nice and tight and then test your door to make sure that it slides back and forth. Since I can't clamp that top piece down, I'm just going to use some masking tape. And if you put a strip over the top, make sure your tape is long enough to wrap down under the bottom because that'll hold it on there nice and tight until the glue has a chance to dry. Now that everything is together and the glue is all dry, I'm just going to go in with a little bit of wood filler and I'm going to fill in those tiny little cracks and gaps where the wood meets. I started with this little spatula, but then I found it was far easier to just use my finger. After the wood filler is completely dried, you can go over it with a piece of sandpaper and just smooth out all of the edges. After you've sanded, just go over it with a light brush just to brush off any of the dust, and then you're ready to either paint or stain your piece. So that brings us to the end of this tutorial. I have to put some thought into what color I want to stain this piece, so I'm not going to do it on this video, but you'll probably see what I came up with in the thumbnail. So that brings us to the end of this tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video and support my channel. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I will see you all in the new year, and once again, a very Merry Christmas if you celebrate Christmas, and all the very best to you in 2024. Bye for now.